Welcome, everyone. I'm Michele Cobb, publisher of AudioFile magazine, the #1 source for audiobook reviews in the world. Today, I'm here with author Brian Andrews to talk about the 9th book in the Tier 1 series, The Adversary, narrated by one of our favorites, Ray Porter. Brian is a Park Leadership Fellow, as well as a contributor at Career Authors, a site dedicated to advancing the careers of aspiring and published writers. He is a U.S. Navy veteran and brings that experience not only to Tier 1, but to other works, including the Sons of Valor series and the supernatural thriller series, The Shepherds, both of which he writes with Jeff Wilson. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. It's great to be here.
So tell us, for our listeners, a little bit about the Tier 1 series and, in particular, The Adversary.
Great. So I'm a co-author, like you said. I write with Jeff Wilson. So together we're Anders and Wilson. And so that's the name you'll see on all the covers. We started collaborating 2015-ish. We met at Thriller Fest, which is probably a very well-known conference to you.
Yes, yes.
And so we were both writing solo, and we sort of became friends over the years at Thriller Fest. And the Tier 1 series was our first collaboration. And so it's really special to us because it was the first thing that we did together, and the first book that we published as Andrews and Wilson. So yeah, Tier 1 came out in 2016. And what a ride. I mean, just to think that we're on book number 9,
Crazy.
right? Most people are trying to get to book 3, and we're on number 9. So we've been very fortunate, very blessed to be able to continue this series we love. And one of the great things about having a long running series is you kind of develop a group of fans who really love these characters, and they almost become, I feel like, a part of their lives. Like they mean as much to our readers as they do to us because we're living with them. And we'll get the crazy emails, from people that say things like, "When is the next Tier 1 book come out? I miss Dempsey." To say I miss the guy means that he feels like he's part of your life. And so The Adversary is an important book. And if you're new to the series, you might want to close your ears for just a second.
Okay, good
Um,
good tip.
because one of the things that's happened in the Tier 1 series over the long term is that, Dempsey's been waiting for a reunion with his son. And we finally give the readers that reunion. We're coming up on Tier 1 book 9. It's been 9 years. So it kind of correlates with how long people have been waiting for this to happen. 9 years is a long time to wait. And so we're really excited about this book. And we're also just really excited because the early reviews that came in were so strong. It told us that we did what we set out to accomplish with this book. So,
Well, congratulations.
yeah, thanks.
So, Ray Porter has narrated several of your books, and I'm wondering, what do you think makes Ray a good match for your novels?
So, can I answer that question with a little story?
Of course.
Okay. So before I became a writer, I was an audiobook junkie. I love audiobooks. That's
Love
why I'm
that.
so happy to be on this podcast, this interview with you. So I remember I was listening to Peter Klein's 13 that was narrated by Ray, and I finished the book. It was so good, and I finished and I thought, wow, if someday that guy could read one of my books, like then I'd know that I'd made it. And so the Tier 1 series was originally published by Thomas and Mercer. And I remember when we first, we were trying to figure out all the logistics of the book. And when it came time for narrator selection, I said, "Can we get Ray Porter to read the series?" And our editor is like, "Well, maybe he's pretty in demand. Like, we'll have to see." And so she's like, "We'll try." So then 3 samples came in from narrators, and none of them were Ray Porter. And so a little cheeky, I wrote back, "These are great, but Ray Porter question mark?" And she didn't respond to that. And then a couple of days later, 2 more samples come in, not Ray Porter. They were okay. And I again, we were friends, so just messing around with her. I was like, "Yeah, nice, but Ray Porter? Question mark again? Exclamation point." And then the third email came, and it had 1 sample, And she didn't even put anything in the body of the email. It just had the attachment that said Ray Porter. And when we listened to it, Jeff and I listened to it, the sample was the opening scene of Tier One. And we heard Dempsey's voice for the first time. And we're like, that's it. That's that's Dempsey. That's the guy who has to read. And Ray has been the best, most incredible partner throughout this whole journey. And the strange thing about it is, when you, like, the first thing I do when a book comes out, when one of the books gets published, is I download the audio and I listen to it. Because for me, that's really exciting to hear all the characters come to life. And Ray's so good. I'm getting to enjoy it like a reader would. And what's strange is that over the years, we've become so familiar and sort of attached to the way that Ray portrays our characters and the way he reads them, that I hear Ray's voice in my head when I'm writing now.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
who you imagine as the character. So it really is a symbiotic sort of thing where the art informs the performance and the performance informs the art. And I love that.
And do you collaborate with him, discuss characters or anything in advance, or you just, when it arrives, you're hearing it as if for the first time?
So there's a couple things that happen. I would say he's such a pro that he doesn't need much.
Yes.
So sometimes what'll happen is, like, we might come up with some notes where we'll say, okay, in case this is unclear, this is what we intended in, this is sort of the tone or what we intended for this section of dialogue or this interaction. Sometimes we'll say, in the case of, like, for example, Whitney Watts in our Sons of Valor series, before he recorded Sons of Valor, we asked for samples of different voices for Whitney and picked one that we thought sounded like her. Same with Chunk. Chunk has a very specific voice, and he had appeared as a cameo in the Tier One series. But then when he became the lead in his own series, we wanted to, sort of curate his voice. And so Ray's super accommodating with that.
Yeah.
And also there's always like a word list. We're military guys, as you introduced us correctly. So there's a lot of acronyms, and it's not fair sometimes for poor Ray, because it's like some acronyms you say the letters, and
Yes.
some acronyms become a word. And so
FUBAR. There you go.
exactly. So how would if you weren't in the military, which acronym you speak, which acronym you say the letters? And so we'll do things like that to help make his job a little easier. But it's great because, we've gotten to know him over the years, and we'll trade direct messages back and forth, when the books come out, because he always crushes it. We're always just so proud of his performance.
Well, here at AudioFile, we certainly love it when the author and the narrator get to interact and have that positive relationship. It really does enhance the listening experience, I find.
I think so too.
Now, The Shepherds, which is a supernatural thriller series,
Yes.
that has a totally different vibe. It's part military, part supernatural, and then you
Yeah.
use McLeod Andrews.
Right.
So, what about McLeod's narration helps your listeners get that tonal shift from the other series that you do?
I mean, they're both stars. Ray and McLeod are both like top narrators in the business, but they definitely have a different tone. And I think McLeod, because we have children in the Shepherd series, McLeod is able to sort of bring that youthful innocence
Yes,
to the performance. I'm not saying Ray couldn't do that, but I just think McLeod is especially good at it.
agreed.
And so when we heard him reading Sarah Beth and the other watchers for the first time, you forget. I mean, he's so good sometimes you forget it's a male narrator because his female voices, you think it's a female speaking, just because he really captures the essence of these characters. So really, really incredible. He has such a great range. I mean, he's really a vocal chameleon. He can impersonate so many different accents and different ages and within across the genders too.
Yeah, you truly have picked some stars for your readers to experience the text in that way.
Yeah.
And it sounds like many of your fans are in fact audiobook listeners. So you mentioned writing one series with Ray's voice in your head. Do you do that with the other series? Do you have McLeod, whispering in your ears, as it were?
Yeah, I think when they're that good, you can't avoid that. It just starts to creep in, and you imagine those voices when you're writing the dialogue. You imagine how that narrator performs them, and I do think it informs the beats that you use, and maybe the phraseology. And one of the other things I should probably mention is that because I was an audiobook fan first, we were very intentional about trying to write for audiobook narration. And what I mean by that is that we know the frustrations that can come from a voice actor trying to portray dialogue that is not normal speech, elevated speech
Hmm.
that doesn't sound realistic potentially, or not having proper cues to let you know that this is internal monologue in a character's head and not dialogue. And just the way that you use your tags too. I mean, too many tags, too many seds in a row can be annoying. And so,
Yes.
we're very intentional. So we read our own books out loud as part of the editing process before we turn them over.
I was going to ask because that level of detail really does, especially with a co-writer, lend itself to hearing it to begin with.
Yes. And I think it's paid off because the Shepherd series won two or three Audis for McLeod, and the Sons of Valor series. It's one of the highest rated series in the market. I mean, right now the series has a 4.9 rating with over 20,000 reviews on Audible. So I mean, that's a real testament to Ray.
Totally. Congratulations on that to both you and Ray. So, you've talked a little bit about your background in the military. You were a submarine officer, and then was Jeff the combat surgeon
Yep,
with the SEAL team? Okay, got it.
correct.
So that brings a lot of authenticity to the series. Now you have to explain the jargon, of course, to the narrator. In order to do that, you're using the email back and forth and all of that. I'm curious when you talked about because I come from a bit of a military background, so I know certain acronyms. But do you ever actually record any of them as well for them?
Yeah, so a couple things we do to help. We put a glossary in the back of the book. So if you got the audiobook, you're not going to have as easy a time because you'd have to
Yes.
have the PDF, which you can get, but you'd have to have that accompany you. So the other little trick that we do is the first time the acronym appears, a lot of times what we'll do is let's say the character says, I'm with the JSOC SEAL team. So then we say, said Bob, referring to the Joint Special Operations Command.
Ah, there you go.
And
Yeah.
so that way you get it, not in dialogue, but you get it in prose. And because, one of the things we also try to do is, we know that our readers are smart. They might not just have that, like you said, they might not have that. They might not have grown up in a military family. If they're not in the military, so this is foreign. But that doesn't mean they can't catch on. And what I remember when I first stepped on the submarine was, it's like, welcome to the command. Here's your, stateroom or your rack. Good luck. There isn't a lot of hand holding in the military. When you show up at a command, it's sort of like figure it out for yourself. And nobody's going to adjust the way that they speak or communicate just because you don't understand what they're saying.
Right.
And so you have to learn on the fly. And it's an education, a self education to get up to speed so you can be participant. And so we kind of take that approach a little bit when you read our books. Like you're coming along for the ride with Dempsey or Chunk or whoever, whether you like it or not. And they're not going to slow down for you to hold your hand in the book. And so I think actually it's, we sometimes get early on, you'll see a review from a reader, a lot of acronyms. I was a little confused, but by the end, I think I got it. And then 6 books later, I'll see a review from that same person, and they're talking the talk, and they're just in their review, so they have come along for the ride. They're part of the team. They understand, what it's like now to be in a unit, and I think that's been something that's been surprising and exciting for us to see.
Sounds like military spouses should be listening to these books before they set foot onto a military campus, really.
Yes.
It would have been helpful to me, I'm sure. So Sons of Valor runs in parallel to Tier 1. For audio, how do you keep character voices and that world building consistent because you've got this shared world without confusing listeners or even yourselves as you're mid-series?
We introduced Chunk Redman first, as Chunk is his nickname, Keith Redman first, in Tier 1 Book 2, which is called War Shadows. And it was just him. And then his team started showing up. They showed up in Crusader 1, they showed up in Red Spectre, and they showed up in Collateral. So you're getting cameos from these characters. Now, we didn't know at the time we were going to make a spin-off series, and certainly didn't tell Ray because we didn't know. So I think, one of the things, there's so many characters in the book that, and Ray records, I don't know, 20 books, 25, 30 books a year. I mean, we're not his only customer. So, I mean, I can't even imagine how he must have a database of voices and how he maintains them. So, what I did notice happened is, he sort of considered these characters as cameos. And so you would have some variation from a book from, War Shadows to Red Spectre, that's 5 years. And so, there's no reason to expect that he would remember, well, I did this one guy's one line of dialogue in this voice 5 years ago. And so that's why when we stood up Sons of Valor as a series, we had to say, okay, now we have to standardize these characters. And I don't know how Ray does it. He might have a library. Maybe he goes back and he like listens to book one or whatever
Yeah.
of that series before he records the next one, snippets or something. But he does, so he standardized those characters now in Sons of Valor. And I think we just leave it up to him, at this point.
So you have multiple publishers, right? Does the casting and production workflow change at all?
Yeah, so we had multiple publishers over the years, and we sort of consolidated now into Blackstone. Blackstone Publishing has taken over the Tier 1 series, Sons of Valor there, and we've also moved the Shepherd series over there. We're just big fanboys of Blackstone Publishing. They're so creative, so responsive too. Not that the other publishers aren't. I mean, they're amazing too. But Blackstone, I think, fits our sort of military ethos and the way we work, our workflows, and the way we communicate. I don't feel like we ruffle any feathers over there, and very, very collaborative. So it's really nice to have everything over there now.
Excellent. And well, you're all about collaboration, obviously having
Yeah,
co-authors. So there you go.
exactly.
So as you look forward, is there any kind of audio experimentation you want to try, like multiple voice casting, bonus tracks, things like that?
Well, I think it would be fun to maybe do like author's notes or sit down with Ray and do an interview sometime or McLeod. That could be really interesting. Well, I'd love to do like an ensemble, like a dramatic performance. And that might be something we have in the works. We've talked about that. And then the other interesting thing, I might as well tell you the news. We're going to be we've been writing a series of short stories. Jeff and I have been doing short stories for about 2 years now. And we've sort of accumulated about a dozen, 15 of these things. And they're all around, 30 to 40,000 words. So you're talking maybe a 3 to 4 hour audiobook, And so what we're going to do, we've talked with Blackstone about this. We're going to release these shorts as individual audiobooks. And so we're going to branch out and get some new narrators. So
Ooh,
we're talking to Ray. Well, Ray's going to do some, of course, and McLeod will do some. But we also are going to have some female narrators, and we're going to reach out to some other narrators that have done some things in film and television. So there might be some guest star type narrators and stuff like that. So yeah, and then we're going to release those, one a month potentially, or we might skip months when we have a book coming out. But if you're an Andrews and Wilson fan, you love our audiobooks, you're going to start getting monthly content from us.
excellent. Well, we're excited to have that breaking news. Well, thank you so much, Brian. It was really a pleasure to talk to you and to learn about your background loving audiobooks as well as being in the military and your interactions with your narrator. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Michelle. I had a great time. You're a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to Blackstone Publishing for helping us create this episode. Be sure to visit AudioFile's website for reviews and sound clips from thousands of audiobooks, including The Adversary by Brian Andrews and Jeff Wilson, known as Andrews Wilson, and narrated by Ray Porter. And please take a moment to rate and review this podcast so you can help others to find us. Thanks for listening.